Tonight on 24, rumors of Trump's trip to Israel coincide with intensified efforts to resume negotiations between Tehran and Washington on Sunday. The Islamic Republic says it will only discuss the nuclear issue and is still uncertain about the timing and the new round of negotiations. Complete closure of Sana'a airport following heavy Israeli attacks. Washington says the Houthis have declared surrender and their bombing will stop. And the new Canadian Prime Minister's trip to Washington amid tense Canada-U.S. relations. Mark Carney told Trump during a meeting that Canada is not for sale.
From the Iran International Studio, this is 24 with Fardad Farahzad.
Viewers of Iran International in Iran and around the world, hello and good day. A few hours ago, the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic said that the date for the next round of negotiations has not been finalized, but Tehran is reviewing Oman's proposed date for the next round of talks. Earlier, Noor News, a media outlet close to the Supreme National Security Council of the Islamic Republic, had reported the fourth round of negotiations between the U.S. and Iran will be held on Sunday, May 11th, in Muscat. At the same time, Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's representative, also told Axios that the White House is trying to hold the fourth round of negotiations by the end of this week. According to reports, the U.S. president might also visit Israel next week during his trip to the Middle East. Meanwhile, the government spokesperson, Masoud Pezeshkian, has stated that the red lines of the Islamic Republic in the negotiations are fixed and clear, and it only discusses the nuclear issue. Fatmeh Mohajirani has said that the other party in the negotiations must also prove its goodwill. According to Mohajirani, since the negotiations are indirect, Tehran has been waiting to receive Oman's perspective, and according to this country, the reason for the delay in negotiations has been logistical, technical issues. Our reporter Samira Garay from the White House and Arash Aliyai from Congress are with us. We'll start with Samira and the latest developments related to the resumption of negotiations. Samira.
Fardad, there are a few reports regarding the fourth round of negotiations and when it might take place. Earlier, Barak Ravid, a reporter for the Axios news website, mentioned that negotiations might take place at the end of this week. Later, he said that Mr. Witkoff told him that perhaps this coming Sunday, negotiations might be held. However, there is also a possibility that due to Mr. Trump's planned trip to the region, the negotiations might not take place in Muscat, Oman, as they could be overshadowed by that trip. Mr. Witkoff has said that they are making progress in the negotiations. It's unclear what kind of progress. He hasn't provided details. He expressed hope that they are on the right track, and he reiterated that Mr. Trump is willing to resolve the Iran crisis through diplomacy. Simultaneously with the release of these reports, and this quote from Mr. Witkoff, it was suggested that they might talk this Saturday or Sunday. Noor News, quoting an Iranian source, said that the negotiations might take place in Muscat on Saturday. The source of this news is an Iranian individual. In other words, we are hearing from the Iranian side about Saturday. Another Iranian source told Reuters that the negotiations will be held over 2 days, either Saturday and Sunday or Sunday and Monday. This is the first time during these negotiations that we are talking about a 2-day negotiation. Previously, the negotiations were held for about 3 to 4 hours, and on the other hand, this informed source did not separate the technical and political negotiations. We currently do not know if the 2-day negotiation will be led solely by Mr. Witkoff or if Mr. Anton will also join, and whether they will conduct technical negotiations or not. And now the Iranians are saying that they are reviewing Oman's proposals for conducting negotiations. It seems that the Omani side has not provided a date to the Iranian side. And it seems that the part of Witkoff's remarks suggesting that negotiations might not take place due to the trip is correct, and it's possible that the fourth round of talks between Iran and the United States might occur after Mr. Trump's trip. Regarding Mr. Trump's trip, which was supposed to be his first foreign trip, Mr. Trump, in fact, during his first term as president, also initially traveled to Saudi Arabia. This time, he had the same plan, but since the Pope passed away, he had to first travel to the Vatican and Italy. Now, we are hearing about this trip from the Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv, quoting Israeli sources, that there is a possibility Mr. Trump might also visit Israel at the end of the trip. That means we have Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and then he might go to Israel. Israel had not been previously announced and has not been confirmed by the White House. Although there have been many rumors here at the White House over the past month about Mr. Trump going to Israel, it has not been confirmed. Meanwhile, today Mr. Trump also said that he has a surprise before he embarks on the Middle East trip. Let's listen to this part of his remarks. Tomorrow.
Also, there's nothing extraordinary. Situations, same. As you know, we will have a trip to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar. I think it will be Monday night. Some members of the cabinet will accompany me, and we will announce a very important piece of news there. I don't want to tell you right now, but it's very, very positive. Of course, the positive and negative aspects are for you to judge, but it's very, very positive. And well, we will announce this news either on Tuesday, or Thursday or Friday, or Monday morning before our departure. It's very rare. News about a specific topic.
Samira, just before the program, we were guessing about it. Go ahead, sorry.
Speak. No, Fardad, please ask.
I was saying, just before the program, we were actually chatting about what it might be. Probably the talk that Mr. Trump mentioned. There is a high possibility that it is about the normalization of relations between Israel and another Middle Eastern country.
That's right, when he announced it and didn't specify in which area they want to make this big announcement, this big news. Many thought it might be in the area of economic tariffs because he didn't specify, but later he somewhat clarified. Mr. Trump himself said that it is not related to the issue of tariffs, and because it is happening before the Middle East trip. Mr. Trump is scheduled to leave here for Saudi Arabia on Monday. In this talk that we heard, he says it will be announced either Monday morning or Thursday, or Friday before the Middle East trip. As a result, many are now speculating that it might be related to the normalization of relations. And we were discussing whether it is Saudi Arabia? Is it the country of Oman? Oman, too, when Sultan Qaboos was in power, it was expected that towards the end of Sultan Qaboos's reign, Oman would seek to normalize relations with Israel. But well, Sultan Qaboos passed away, and Haytham bin Tariq preferred to prioritize the normalization of relations. Maybe they have done it now, and we are supposed to hear the news. Regarding Oman, there were many challenges ahead in relation to Saudi Arabia. Now we have to see if in the 2 or 3 months since Mr. Trump took office, he has been able to conduct enough diplomatic work to resolve the issues between Israel and Saudi Arabia, leading to the major news of the normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which truly could be the biggest news anyone from the Middle East could hear in recent years. For many, it might be difficult to imagine, but let's not forget that when Mr. Trump created the Abraham Accords, and various countries joined, history was being made at that time as well. But everyone was waiting to see whether Saudi Arabia would eventually join the Abraham Accords or not. We have to see this. Let's watch and see what will happen with it. Today, Mr. Trump, aside from this, somewhat surprised Fardad with the issue of the Houthis. That the Houthis surrendered, that the attacks will stop. The Israeli side says that we didn't know anything, and Mr. Trump surprised us again. Mr. Trump's surprises seem to continue like a domino effect. We have to see whether the Abraham Accords will include Saudi Arabia or not. And regarding Iran, it seems we should wait to see if there will be more developments after Mr. Trump's regional trip.
Roush. Now it seems that these negotiations might resume on Sunday, but whether they do or not, it seems that the reactions both in Congress and in the American media are very significant regarding these Iran-U.S. negotiations.
Sorry, you asked me questions, but your voice cut off.
Yes, Roush, I asked you about the reactions to the Iran-U.S. negotiations.
Got it. Let's see. Yesterday, Ms. Tulsi Gabbard, the head of the Dillon Intelligence Agency, of the U.S. National Security Agency, who is actually considered America's top spy, was invited to a podcast. It was one of America's famous podcasts called Megyn Kelly, or Ms. Megyn Kelly, a veteran journalist herself. A Republican, was once a critic of Trump and is now one of Mr. Chaco's allies. Ms. Megyn Kelly was asking Ms. Gabbard about the differences between the two factions of the Republican Party, one known as the neocons, and the other as MAGA, and they were discussing this. And first, they asked her about the New York Times report that was written a month ago, stating that some senior members of the Trump administration went to Washington, D.C. before Netanyahu's visit to meet with Mr. Trump and told him not to succumb to Netanyahu's pressure to attack the Islamic Republic's nuclear facilities. Ms. Kelly asked Ms. Gabbard if this story is true. Ms. Gabbard responded that the conversation was based on the president's trust with one of his advisors. And we reprimanded the person who leaked this information to the newspapers, which implicitly means she said, yes, the New York Times report is correct. The New York Times report also states that J.D. Vance, the vice president, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and Tulsi Gabbard, the head of the U.S. National Security Agency, went to Mr. Trump and told him that Israel wants the U.S. to be drawn into a war with the Islamic Republic, and that he should not agree to this, under Netanyahu's pressure to attack the Islamic Republic's nuclear facilities. And then they talked about what a potential agreement with the Islamic Republic would actually create within the Republican Party, both in terms of reality and discourse. Don't forget, both of these individuals are people for whom the events happening in the U.S. might be just as important as the story with Iran itself. A potential agreement with Iran. And there we saw Ms. Tulsi Gabbard explaining that this would be an agreement built on very strong verification. If this happens, she said it won't be like the JCPOA where we just sign an agreement. We have to take 2 sheets of paper and say goodbye. We have to turn our backs and leave. No, it is supposed to be verified and continuously verified for a long time to build trust. And she said it will be a process. So it's a process where both sides have to move forward step by step, meaning a long time. That was actually her intention. And then when Ms. Megyn Kelly asked Ms. Gabbard again that the neocons are not very happy and want to attack the Islamic Republic. According to Ms. Kelly, Ms. Gabbard said all options are on the table. Nothing has changed, but the President of the United States does not want to go to war. The United States also does not want to go to war. And now this story about the Houthis that Samira mentioned. This has been a problem that arose during Mr. Biden's time. The Houthis attacks on international shipping and on Israel. Now Mr. Trump, in response to the news, said, they are saying, it's unclear how the Houthis conveyed this story to the Americans. The Olanis say it was our doing. We made the agreement between the U.S. and the Houthis. And the Houthis have said that we do not want to continue fighting. That was something Mr. Trump said. But then Bloomberg called the Houthis to the spokesperson of the Houthis. Bloomberg says they told him that we only said, if the American ships stop their attacks, we will only stop attacks on American ships. And the Houthis have said their attacks on international shipping will continue and their attacks on Israel will continue. So we have to wait and see how accurate these claims by the Houthis are.
Thank you both. Arash Alavi and Congressman Samira Garai from the White House. Shahir Shahid Thalith, an international relations and Iran issues analyst from Calgary, and Layla Marvadi, a political analyst from Helsinki, are with us. I'll start with Ms. Marvadi. Ms. Marvadi, as the Iranian side says, and Mr. Witkoff also mentions, it seems that the negotiations are resuming again, most likely this Sunday, on the eve of Mr. Trump's trip to the Middle East. A lot has happened since the last round until now. In your opinion, where do both sides stand now?
Well, with you and your esteemed guest. Look, let me say, in general, that the nature of these negotiations is still not clear. On one hand, when we look at these negotiations, within the framework of negotiations that we categorize in international law and diplomatic relations. It has some characteristics like mediation or facilitation, which is a specific method, and it lacks some of its characteristics. This is one of the main ambiguities about what indirect negotiation means when the two sides have directly talked to each other in some instances, unless it refers to those previous 3 rounds. Because really, those 3 rounds did not yield any specific results at all. There has been no clarification or removal of ambiguities regarding that. What is currently apparent is that both sides have the will to continue negotiations, but whether this will lead to a result, an understanding, or a so-called agreement that satisfies both parties. In my opinion, it's too early to judge that, because we saw last week that a negotiation was supposed to take place, but it was canceled without any clarification, and there was talk of so-called logistical issues, which were not really specified. And on the other hand, we must also consider the role of Israel in this situation, especially considering that in the past 2 days, there has been an attack by the Houthis, and Israel has essentially emphasized that the threats they make are threats from the Islamic Republic and will not go unanswered. And this can also affect the negotiations themselves, so to speak. Another important issue that I think has been overlooked is the discussion about the International Atomic Energy Agency, the role it should have, which has really been overlooked in this context. Ultimately, it is the agency that can give an opinion on whether the agreement that has been concluded aligns with and meets the standards that the agency itself has set and is acceptable or not. If it is not acceptable, Iran and the United States may reach a negotiation outcome that is desirable for them. But it is not in the European Union's interest. It may not be desirable for the agency. What will happen in such a situation? Are only the 2 parties satisfied, with Europe not being satisfied, with the agency not being satisfied, with the Israeli government, whose security interests are severely threatened? What stance will they take in this situation, which I think is very likely to activate the Marshall mechanism, and that ambiguous part of the negotiation can also be very problematic.
Mr. Shahid Thalith, next week at this time while we are talking, Mr. Trump will be in Saudi Arabia. It's part of his Middle East tour, which will also include Qatar and the UAE. Now there's talk that he might also go to Israel, and he himself said just a couple of hours ago that he will announce a big news. How much do you think this trip could be related to the negotiation discussions? And how likely is it that he might want to use this opportunity to make a concession, to gain a concession regarding the nuclear negotiations?
I think one of the issues that will definitely be discussed with Saudi Arabia, as we can all guess, is the nuclear agreement with Iran. It's a topic that highlights Saudi Arabia's change in stance compared to the first term when Mr. Trump entered the White House. If you remember, back then the discussion was about this, that the head of the snake is in Tehran and it must be crushed there. And now Saudi Arabia has almost made a 180-degree turn and wants the U.S. not to attack Iran, seeking a diplomatic resolution to the issue. Saudi Arabia plays a very important role because Mr. Trump is very interested in bringing Saudi Arabia into a circle where, on one hand, as he himself says, they would make a massive investment, around $1 trillion in the U.S. Mr. Trump, personally, has interest in maintaining a really good relationship with Saudi Arabia after he leaves the White House. On the other hand, as was mentioned in the reports, there's the issue of the Abraham Accords, which is perhaps Mr. Trump's main goal: to establish relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel and bring peace to the entire region. He wants to leave behind a legacy of establishing peace in the region. But all of this, so to speak, hinges on the nuclear agreement being reached. if the nuclear agreement is not reached and we are pushed towards war. In that region, in my opinion, all these discussions will be postponed, and this is not something Mr. Trump would want. In my opinion, Mr. Trump has a very strong motivation to resolve the nuclear agreement issue through diplomacy. Mr. Khamenei is also of the same mindset, and in my opinion, this has created a strategic decision between the two to move towards an agreement. As a result, I believe there is a possibility, but I'm not saying this agreement will definitely be reached. The likelihood of this agreement being reached is greater than the likelihood of it not being reached and is heading towards war.
Let's take it. Mr. Shahid Thalif, please stay with us. And also, Ms. Marvati, right now the spokesperson for the U.S. State Department, is talking about the negotiations with Iran.
Therefore, we must be cautious. And, well, when we are looking at the development of events, it's important to understand that some of these issues take more time and are not necessarily connected or related to some other developments. But yes, there are events that sometimes happen simultaneously when you have an entire region and several complex issues. There are several simultaneous negotiations taking place, multiple ceasefires. Therefore, it's inevitable that some events happen together. So this is the result of what the Trump administration has been working on for weeks now. So this is the only thing I can tell you right now about the negotiation with the Iranians. Can you confirm? This Sunday? Let's see. So let's pose this question. Well, this question has been asked of us before. We addressed it last week as well. I can't give you more details about what's happening, and I can't confirm what will happen. But as soon as there's something new and we hear about it, you'll hear from me from this very platform. It seems the Trump administration has presented a draft budget that includes significant cuts in U.S. aid and U.S. funding for the United Nations.
Well, you saw the statements from the U.S. State Department spokesperson. There wasn't much enlightening information about the negotiation process and the next round, but there's a good chance it will take place starting this Sunday. Ms. Marvati, I'll continue with you. There are now many discussions about the possibility that the Americans might not only insist on the complete halt of Iran's uranium enrichment, but also raise the issue of stopping or limiting Iran's missile programs. Considering the pressures the Americans applied before the start of the negotiations, including internal economic pressures, do you think this is something Tehran can accept now?
Well, they were actually supposed to focus more on the nuclear program, especially with the recent statements by Mr. Trump saying that we want the complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program. If the U.S. had only focused on this issue, it might have been possible for the Islamic Republic to at least feel at ease regarding its nuclear program. But what apparently seems to be the case is that the Americans actually intend to impose restrictions on the Islamic Republic, not only regarding the nuclear program, but also concerning Iran's missile program. I think, given the fundamental challenges currently facing the Islamic Republic, especially internal issues, it might ultimately be possible that the Islamic Republic, not with all of its so-called missile capabilities, but probably by limiting some of its missile capabilities, such as its long-range missiles, might agree to some extent and want these negotiations to be completed. Contrary to some so-called analysts, I believe that the Islamic Republic, at this juncture, due to the potential dangers that might arise for it, sees it as very necessary to reach an agreement with the United States in any case and to prevent the U.S. or Israel from attacking Iran's nuclear facilities. And ultimately, the Islamic Republic might agree to some of these issues, such as so-called limiting its missile program, not eliminating it.
Mr. Shahid Thalif, although various figures, including Marco Rubio and the U.S. Secretary of State, have repeatedly talked about the complete halt of enrichment, Mr. Trump himself, in his recent interview with NBC, seems to have left some room for, possibly giving some concessions to, Iran, including the fact that he mentioned Iran's peaceful nuclear program might be able to continue. Now, we don't know the specifics of this, and whether enrichment, for example, at 3.67% is included or not. But how much do you think the Americans might be willing to take a step back?
That's a very good question. Look, as you well pointed out, Mr. Trump, while saying that he seeks the complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program, says that he listens to their words and wants to listen to them to see why they want to have a peaceful nuclear program. You're right. In my opinion, if the issue of so-called verification and very strict verification is raised, they might be able to keep enrichment at the level of 3.67%. They might keep uranium storage at the level of 100 kilograms, both of which were set at 300 kilograms in the JCPOA. But both of these limitations were set to expire in 2030 according to the JCPOA, under the sunset clauses. They might say they will make this permanent, along with making the additional protocol permanent. They might completely halt the operation of IR-6 and IR-8 centrifuges, effectively ending Iran's nuclear program. Now, without Mr. Khamenei losing face or his reputation being damaged by saying the enrichment program has stopped. But Iran's nuclear program would effectively become symbolic. And if we look at it from the nuclear issue perspective, it poses no danger anymore. Because keep in mind, no country has ever managed to acquire a nuclear bomb under the additional protocol. It's very, very unlikely because, as we know, there are snap inspections with only 2 hours' notice, allowing them to inspect all these nuclear sites. As a result, if they reach such a point, well, practically, this nuclear program has become neutralized and ineffective. And well, in my opinion, the U.S. has achieved its goal, as, at least through this means, they cannot proceed to acquire a nuclear bomb. If the discussion is that they might secretly go and do this, well, even if enrichment is stopped, they might still secretly go and do it. Therefore, I think, as you mentioned, Trump has left the door open, and it is possible that they can reach an agreement through this way.
Thank you, both. Shahir Shahid Salas, journalist and political analyst from Calgary, Canada, and Layla Morabadi, political analyst from Helsinki. In response to Israel's heavy attacks on Yemen, the Houthis say that this country has crossed the red lines and should expect a response. The Israeli army, calling its attacks successful, has stated that Sana'a airport has been completely shut down. In addition to Sana'a airport, multiple positions including power plants in Sana'a, Amran province, and other northern regions of Yemen have also been targeted. Houthi media reported that at least 4 people were killed and 39 others were injured. Netanyahu and his defense minister have warned that the Islamic Republic will pay the full price for the Houthi attacks.
Today, I forgot to say this here. Share with us.
I have said many times that anyone who attacks the state of Israel will have their blood on their own hands. Yesterday, I said that the Houthi attack will not be answered with one strike, but with multiple strikes. Yesterday, we delivered a hard blow to the port of Hodeidah. Today, our planes targeted the Sana'a airport, an airport that allows the terrorist army an aerial entry into the country of terror to operate, and facilitates the launching of missiles against us. We decide when, how, and what targets to respond to. This decision-making belongs to us. This issue also includes the main supporter of the Houthis, which is Iran. Without Iran's approval and continuous support, the Houthis could not have carried out the criminal missile attack against us. President Trump also said this a month and a half ago. I also repeat today that we will settle accounts with anyone who attacks the country of Israel.
Our reporter Artan Roush has joined us from in front of the White House. Artan, it might have reached its peak, tensions between Israel and the Houthis, especially after the attack on Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, which is now a bit more right behind you. Mr. Trump is talking about the Houthis, saying they will completely stop their attacks.
I think we are in a complex and strange 48-hour period where it's really hard to say what events can even be predicted. Because just when Mohammed al-Qadhi, one of the Houthi leaders, emphasized, after the Israeli attacks, on cement factories, Sana'a airport, power plant centers, and other strategic parts of Yemen, that he would use all his positions and resources to make the path unsafe for Americans, British, and Israelis, considering it a fundamental threat for a renewed series of attacks. But hours after these statements, we see that Mr. Trump's approach was completely different, and the Yemeni side's approach was also different. After such a strong statement, it is heard that the Houthis are ready to lay down their weapons. Mr. Donald Trump, following this extensive Israeli attack, which according to Israeli officials, involved at least 50 heavy bombs in an operation targeting 20 locations by dozens of aircraft. Now Mr. Trump is saying something very different. Listen, Mr. Trump's remarks.
We received good news last night that the Houthis informed us they no longer want to fight. They don't want to fight anymore. And of course, we welcome this request of theirs. We'll stop bombing them. I hope that the Houthis have surrendered. And most importantly, we will trust their promise. They said they will no longer attack ships, and the reason for our attack on the Houthis was precisely this. We recently discovered this. They just told us right now.
The issue is that a few hours ago, Noor News announced that Oman was the mediating country that actually brought about this peace. It seems that the Omani Foreign Ministry has said that Muscat has become a mediator between the Houthis and the Americans to establish this peace sustainably. However, it's unclear from the Houthi side whether they mean they will only refrain from attacking American positions, or if it also includes the issue with the Israelis. Senator Tom Cotton emphasized after this operation that the Islamic Republic is behind equipping and preparing the necessary facilities for the Houthi attacks. However, Mr. Rubio has a different perspective. Marco Rubio, the United States Secretary of State, is saying that the Houthis are equipped with very strong resources and have extensive capabilities, and he has emphasized that a war with them might not be easy. Therefore, if they are inclined towards peace, the U.S. is also ready. Let me say that in the meantime, Israeli officials were somewhat surprised, because some of them told Axios that they were astonished by the news regarding peace between the U.S. and the Houthis, and it seems they were completely unaware of this process.
Thank you, Artan Roush, from in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. Ali Sarra Zada, a Middle East analyst from Frankfurt, is with us. Mr. Sarra Zada, how do you view Mr. Trump's statements that the Houthis have surrendered after all these battles, missile launches, attacks on ships, and sending missiles to Israel, suddenly stopping all at once? Are you really buying such a surrender?
I am also caught up between the propaganda that the Houthis officially display. I just looked at Al Masirah, the important Houthi website and Southern news agency, which is also owned by the Houthis. There is no mention there of them having surrendered, but logically speaking, they have no other way. Because in any case, Israel's attacks have actually destroyed all of the Houthis' infrastructure, the port of Hodeidah, which was supposedly the only way to deliver humanitarian aid to Yemen, was for the Houthis, and it has been destroyed. Sana'a airport has also been completely destroyed today. And as your reporter said, almost all the infrastructure has been destroyed. Therefore, logically speaking, they have no choice but to raise their hands in surrender. And apparently, the fact that Oman has generally gotten involved in the issue and has acted as a mediator here seems to be due to pressure from Iran or at Iran's request. Of course, Oman itself has interests, because Oman is the only country besides Saudi Arabia that shares a land border with Yemen. In any case, they also got involved and told Trump something like this. But for the Israelis, as your reporter mentioned, it's very difficult, because Mr. Netanyahu has said that we will carry out several attacks. That is, the expectation was that even after today's attack, more attacks would be carried out. But Mr. Trump, in his recent statement, said that we will no longer attack Yemen. Therefore, Israel will be alone. That means it has to attack on its own. This means that we are facing contradictions from both Israel and the United States. We are waiting for questions to get answers. Also from the Yemenis or Houthis, where various questions are being heard. But in any case, with the attacks that Israel has carried out, the Houthis have practically lost everything and launched the missile they had aimed at Tel Aviv. I think it was more from recent smuggling rather than being in the warehouses, because the warehouses have almost all been destroyed by the United States from March 13th. Until today, there hasn't been a day without several attacks. That's why there are still questions remaining. But I think the Houthis will surrender, and it will be beneficial for both themselves and the Islamic Republic. And with this issue, in fact, the last link of the so-called resistance axis has also been eliminated.
Thank you. Ali Sarra Zada, Middle East analyst from Frankfurt. Amid tensions in Canada-U.S. relations, Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, met with Donald Trump at the White House. In this meeting, Mr. Trump described Carney's victory in the recent Canadian elections as one of the greatest comebacks in political history, and said that perhaps his own presidency in the U.S. had a significant impact on Carney's victory in the Canadian elections. Mark Carney, who traveled to Washington to reset the trade relations between the two countries, had previously dismissed the possibility of immediate progress in improving relations, stating that tough but constructive negotiations lie ahead. In the meeting, Mr. Carney addressed Trump, referring to the annexation of Canada to the U.S., saying that Canada is not for sale.
That's the issue. It's a very friendly conversation. It's like that argument we had with another president. Remember, this won't be like that. It's a very friendly conversation. We want to produce our own cars. We don't want Canadian cars. So we've imposed tariffs on cars coming from Canada. And well, at another point, it won't be economically viable for Canada to continue producing those cars. And we have massive steel manufacturing facilities being built within the United States. So we don't want Canadian steel, and we don't want Canadian aluminum either. It's very simple. Because we want to be self-sufficient in this area.
Masa Mortisavi, our reporter from Toronto, has joined us. Masa, Mr. Carney has taken over the prime ministership of this country during one of the most tense periods in Canada-U.S. relations in modern history. And now he is heading to Washington. They had a tough, but relatively friendly conversation at the White House.
You could say they had a respectful conversation. They were expecting much worse than this. Canadian media had been setting the stage for 2 days, suggesting that there might even be behavior similar to Trump's, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky towards Mark Carney, and whether he would walk out of the room. Would he get up from the negotiation table in such a case or not? But it seemed that there was a very friendly relationship between the two. It appeared that Mark Carney allowed Trump to receive as much attention from the media as he wanted, remaining silent. He spent most of the meeting in silence. He only reminded of 2 points, one of which was important. Regarding the annexation of Canada to the United States, he stated that given your background in real estate, you can probably understand that some places are not for sale. Like the Oval Office, Buckingham Palace, or Canada, none of these are for sale. He also emphasized that he recently had a meeting with the owners of Canada. And they also said that Canada is not for sale, and reminded that Canada is part of British possessions, and if the United States wants to make any move, they must reach an agreement with them. It seems that the white smoke he mentioned should not be expected after this meeting, and the final result was exactly that. This was actually a step to continue the next negotiations in a friendly atmosphere, something that Trump himself also emphasized. He said, "I have many friends in Canada. I have an attachment," but in his remarks, he actually contradicted Mark Carney's words, saying never say. It's always possible. Time might prove that eventually Canada wants to join the United States. It seems that now we have to wait until 3 o'clock, which is already 10 minutes past. Let's see what Mark Carney has to say to the reporters about this meeting at the U.S. Embassy, at the Canadian Embassy in the United States.
Thank you, Masa Mortisavi in Toronto. I have the podium right now. I see in the news agencies that they are preparing for the Canadian Prime Minister to speak to the media. As soon as his speech begins, if the schedule allows, we will definitely broadcast it for you. Shayhan Sami, a national security expert, has also joined us from Virginia. Mr. Sami, Mr. Carney very clearly and seriously told Mr. Trump today that Canada is not for sale. Just as many places in the world are not for sale, and he is in the real estate business and should know this. Do you think this is the end of this tension? Do we want to turn Canada into this? Will it be the 51st state of America? Or is it just the beginning of a new era of tensions between Ottawa and Washington? Mr. Samihai, I think your microphone is muted. I'd appreciate it if you could unmute it.
I apologize. Once again, I extend my regards to you, Mr. Farahzad, and the dear people of Iran. No, this is Mr. Trump's first approach. Mr. Trump always likes to, as we say, poke others to get concessions from them. But what Mr. Carney did today actually disarmed Mr. Trump right from the start. He came and gave some encouragement and praise to Trump's character, talking about how he is a transformative person and wants to improve America's situation, to bring Trump down from his emotional state right at the start. Mr. Trump also tried to get under Mr. Carney's skin, but it didn't happen. Why? Because both of them know they are in a difficult situation right now. Carney, because it's the beginning of his term, needs to prove to the Canadian people that he is capable. And Trump, because economic issues and hardships are putting pressure on Americans, and it might become more difficult for him in the coming months. We should also not forget that despite the tariff war that Mr. Trump initiated last year, Canadians bought about $340 billion worth of goods from the U.S. So Canada, as one of the main economic partners of the U.S., is very important to America. But I think Trump will at least try to continue these issues for a few more months.
And indeed, Mr. Carney is very experienced in the commercial and financial fields. He has been the governor of the Bank of Canada. He has been the governor of the Bank of England. How much do you think this can strengthen his bargaining power, especially in trade negotiations? Over tariffs?
To a very high degree. Because, you see, Mr. Carney himself has had a hand in real estate and approaches Mr. Trump from that angle. But because Mark Carney himself has complete mastery over all economic and financial matters, Mr. Trump cannot come and force him to accept something. That's why I truly believe that Mr. Carney can find a practical solution where both Mr. Trump can save face for himself and Mr. Carney can achieve his desired viewpoint. For instance, today in their negotiation, Mr. Trump repeatedly stated that we have our own cars. We have everything of our own. We don't need Canada. But the very cars that are being used in the US have a large amount of their parts and components made in Canada. And even their raw materials come from Canada and are even assembled in Canada. So Mr. Trump also knows that America's need for Canada is undeniable. Trump just wants to secure that Last-minute win for himself.
Thank you, Shaheen Samiai, national security expert from Virginia. And thank you for watching tonight's 24 program. You can watch the program again a little later on YouTube.